This is episode number 23 of Hitting for the Cycle. That's Ben Kruse. I'm Ryan Touhey. And the regular season officially begins next week as the Dodgers and Padres will meet in South Korea. But we're still in the middle of spring training, and there are a lot of stories going on around the league. So, Ben, how are you doing today?
Good, Ryan. How are you?
I've been better. There's been a lot of drama going on around spring training, especially for me and my New York Yankees, which we're going to get into like right away. But before we do, we just want to remind everybody, as usual, to follow Hitting for the Cycle on Facebook, X, and Instagram at HFTC Follow the Empty the Bench podcast network at ETB Network. Follow our YouTube channel at youtube.com/ETB Network and listen to our podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, and also, are you interested in betting on your favorite team and you don't, you're crazy with the parlays and the lines and making your head spin? Download the Wool Spreads app. So essentially, you can put $15 in for a competition, and it could be multi people. Obviously, March Madness is coming up next week. You can get on the action there. We did the competition during the football season. It was great. Coming from my personal overall thinking of it, just download it. It's great, and you won't want to miss it. Download the Will Spreads app today.
All right, so let's get into this. So we're going to begin with something that I'm sure nobody has ever heard before. I'm being sarcastic when I say this. The Yankees are dealing with injuries, and they are to two of their most significant impact players on their roster, ace Gerrit Cole and outfielder Aaron Judge. And let's start with Cole. So Cole, he was feeling he wasn't feeling right apparently after his spring training outing. I actually went to the Yankee Blue Jay game on March 1st in Tampa, where he made his spring debut against Toronto. And apparently, according to Aaron Boone, the way he described it, Cole wasn't recuperating fast enough, or the way that he would during the early part of a start. He felt as if he had thrown over 100 pitches after the first inning, somewhere along those lines. He just felt very fatigued and just didn't feel right. So a couple of days ago, it was announced by the Yankees that Cole was going to be getting an MRI on his throwing arm. And all Yankee fans, including myself, went into panic mode. Gerrit Cole obviously is the ace of the Yankees. He's their best pitcher and is arguably the best pitcher in the entire league, one could argue. And when you hear that your top pitcher is going to be getting an MRI on his throwing arm, that's never a good sign. And that's something nobody ever wants to hear. And many people were fearing the possibility of losing Gerrit Cole for the entire 2024 season, which would just be detrimental to the Yankees' hopes of going far in 2024. Gerrit Cole, ever since he signed that contract, actually, really, ever since he broke into Major League Baseball in the early 2010s, he's been pretty reliable when it comes to staying healthy. He's a rare phenomenon in a day and age where a lot of Major League starting pitchers are continuously struggling to stay healthy, getting Tommy John surgery. Cole's a revelation. He hasn't really had many health concerns, whether it was with the Pirates, the Astros, or the Yankees. Obviously, he signed that big contract to join the Yankees in 2020, and he really has, been a workhorse, and he has stayed healthy. He's been on that mound ever since he signed that contract, unlike some other guys. So, this was just not something you wanted to hear, but this was something that I kind of had a feeling was going to happen at some point. For a guy who just throws as hard as he does and has been around as long as he has, I just felt like he couldn't keep this health up forever. I was just hoping it wasn't this year. So, unfortunately, Cole, like I mentioned, had to get an MRI on his pitching arm. Now, fortunately, the MRI showed that there was no tear in his UCL, which is good. That's good news for Yankee fans, and it should be a sign of encouragement. However, they're still concerned about the ligament in his pitching arm, and he's actually going to be getting a second MRI today in Los Angeles. He's going over to LA to visit sports surgeon Dr. Neil El Etrachi. I don't know how you pronounce his last name. I probably botched that, but
Yeah,
he's going to get a
probably
second
close
opinion
enough.
on it. He's going to get a second opinion on his arm. But basically, he's going to miss some time. He won't be ready for opening day, obviously, and he's going to be out for about 1 to 2 months, according to the Yankees. Now, obviously, losing Gerrit Cole for any period of time is not good at all. And the Yankees obviously were counting on him, and they've counted on him, ever since he signed that contract to get the team off on the right foot and to be that ace, that dominant ace that they desperately need in that very thin rotation. So this is not something the Yankees needed at the beginning of the year. Like I said, every single year in spring training, they deal with significant injuries. It's like it's one guy after another, and it's always a guy who the Yankees need in order to have a successful year. Now, this might be their biggest challenge in quite some time. Starting the year off without their most reliable, dominant starter, it's going to be tough. And obviously, like I mentioned, that rotation behind Gerrit Cole is very thin and unproven. I mean, Carlos Rodon, is going to be in his second season with the Yankees. Rodon, obviously, we mentioned it last week. He's coming off a miserable first season with the Yankees where he had a ballooned ERA and he dealt with injury problems of his own. So you can't really trust him to replace Cole as your ace at the beginning of the year. Most logically, out of the remaining guys in the rotation, the guy who most likely would probably smoothly fit, I don't know, maybe smoothly isn't the right word, but the guy who would probably be the guy to start opening day for the Yankees now is Marcus Stroman. It's kind of crazy to even conceive of. But Stroman he's kind of got that mentality that you want out of an ace. He's not afraid to get his hands dirty and to take on a big responsibility of starting a big game like opening day. But obviously, with the Yankees, their rotation after Cole definitely needs some backup. And there was talk about the Yankees maybe making a move with the White Sox to acquire their ace, Dylan Cease. But Cease is going elsewhere, which we'll talk about a little bit later on in this episode. But if you're the Yankees, it's March 14th as of the recording of this video as we're recording this. So it's March 14th, and two of the biggest free agents are still on the market. Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery still have not signed with a team yet. Now, if you're the Yankees, are you willing to risk signing one of those two to replace Cole until he's ready to come back? Spend a lot of money. But the problem is neither one of these guys are going to be ready for opening day because they've waited till the very last possible millisecond to sign with a team. But this is something Scott Boras has been waiting for, a significant injury to a big pitcher. And I'm sure he's chomping at the bit for the Yankees to give him a call and ask if they can negotiate with him to make an offer with either Snell or Monty. So, yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding the Yankees right now in regards to Cole. I'll pass the mic over to you. What do you think about this?
Yeah, obviously, my supposed ace last week, of course, is down for the year. And just myself coming from the other side of it, I hate it. I hate injuries just overall, no matter if it's a Red Sox, no matter if, obviously it sucks for my team, but from a rival perspective, Gerrit Cole is by far the best pitcher in the AL, and you never want, regardless of who it is, but for a guy of his caliber, it obviously sucks. And I was wishing hopefully for the best in terms of hopefully it wasn't, Tommy John, right? Because if it's your pitching elbow, it's typically not great. Now, I don't think that the Yankees are out of the woods yet. Because you looked at Jacob DeGrom. Jacob DeGrom he had right elbow, I think, surgery or like soreness and stuff like that. They're kind of talking about like the MRI, like, oh, he's going to come back in maybe like a couple months or two. And then like they found out like when the time's coming that essentially he was basically shot like for the year, essentially. So I think also too, they were asking Aaron Boone yesterday during the game against us actually about his prognosis. And obviously Heyman and the national media were saying 1 to 2 months. The Yankees were thinking otherwise. I don't know specifically because they would have probably confirmed their overall report. They don't know specifically how long it's really going to take. So 1 or 2 months, I think, is your best case scenario. Worst case scenario specifically could potentially be for the year, and that's what I hope it's not the case for. But you hopefully to be kind of prepared for all different types of instances where um, I saw him. There was a viral video, which I don't know why this media guy was asking constant questions, like, bro, like leave the guy alone. But he Cole himself just looked very, he was in L.A. when the video happened. He looked very distraught. He even was using his phone with his left hand, and people are speculating like, oh, this is not great at all. So yeah, despite obviously the best case scenario, 1 or 2 months type thing, it could be a lot more than that. And obviously, with the Yankees in terms of lying to the overall fans, kind of like with the Red Sox specifically in terms of them going full throttle. With the Yankees, they lie to their fans in terms of the injury book. So it's tough. It really sucks. And I'll still talk about Judge in a bit, but yeah, just coming from a Sox fan myself too. Like I hope he's good. I hope he's all right. But like you mentioned in terms of start opening day, yeah, like that's pretty thin. There's a lot of questions, and obviously, when we were doing our season previews, I said that outside of Gerrit Cole, there's a lot of questions with that team. Well, now essentially a lot of those questions have to be the questions that step up, at least for the first couple months until he comes back. So, with Rodon, like you mentioned last year, it wasn't great. I thought yesterday, of course, our lineup specifically, we only had guys like Tristan Casas, a couple of our regulars playing, but I thought that his stuff was pretty good. His velocity probably looked best all spring yesterday, so that should at least have a little bit of hope. But it's all about consistency. For a fact, Gerrit Cole is going to bring consistency day start, day out, so that's why he's so pivotal. But Marcus Stroman, I think he comes in, maybe he gets a start against Houston. Obviously that first overall West Coast trip you guys, I believe, have Houston, and then you have Arizona. So,
Yes.
I mean, that's obviously a really tough start to start the year. And so regardless, like I said, I hope he's good. I hope he's all right. I hope it's not season ending, but, I know that the national media said, it's not torn, but, when he goes to another doctor, Ryan, too, when he goes all the way across country to LA, it's not just something that's really, small and stuff like that. It's something major. So we'll probably know more about it today. And like I said, the Yankees right now specifically have not specified just yet, like in an Instagram or like a Twitter type thing in terms of how long this is going to take. So I don't think you guys are out of the woods just yet. And I'd still be a little concerned specifically in terms of how long it might take, because if he pitches right after 1 or 2 months, who knows how he's going to be, right? He still has to build himself up. He's only had one spring specifically during the spring. It's not like, obviously he'd probably be coming back just fine, but you just don't know, right? You look at like a lot of guys have had shoulder stuff, injuries and stuff like that. A lot of the times they don't recover back like right away. So even if he does come back, how is he going to be, right? So it's just a major blow regardless, how long it's going to be, because either can come back and he's not going to be the same guy like right away, or it could just be a lot longer in terms of the recovery. So it's just a bad case scenario regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. I do agree with you that we're not out of the woods just yet. There's definitely, when it comes to pitching injuries, and especially when it comes to your throwing arm specifically, like the arm just takes such a beating throughout the course of a baseball season. You're throwing every 5 days. Eventually, the wear and tear is going to catch up to you. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago when Luis Severino started dealing with arm problems, and the Yankees were saying it was inflammation, and he doesn't need Tommy John surgery or anything like that. I mean, he practically missed the entire 2019 season, didn't come back till the very end of September, barely made the postseason roster. And then we get into spring training in 2020, and Cashman makes the announcement that he needs Tommy John surgery. And then ever since then, he's never been the same and has struggled to stay on the field. So, I'm just hoping to God it's not something like that where, the years of pitching hard just, drain your career. I mean, Cole is a better pitcher than Severino, obviously, but, I did. this stuff kind of scares me. I hope that Cole, I hope this is the best case scenario. I hope that this doctor doesn't find anything too alarming, and I hope the 1 to 2 month time frame prediction is accurate. But like you said, you can never be sure. That's just an estimation, and the Yankees are notorious for lying through their teeth to their fan base when it comes to injuries. They're no doctors. So anything that Brian Cashman says, anything that Aaron Boone says when it comes to injuries with their team, take it very, very lightly with a pinch of salt, because more times than not, they are going to be wrong or fibbing through their teeth. So that's the case with Gerrit Cole. Like you said, we'll probably know more about this injury either later today or tomorrow. But regardless, he's going to miss some time. He will not be with the Yankees for opening day. He will not be with the Yankees definitely from March and April. He will not be around the team. So big blow to the Yankees. And the other injury that we're going to discuss with the Yankees, this one's a little strange. Aaron Judge apparently had an MRI on his abs. I'm not making that up when I say that. He had an MRI on his abs. According to Aaron Boone, Dr. Boone mentioned that Judge was a little beaten up. He was beaten up already in the third week of spring training. When I heard this, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me. How are you already beaten up by the third week of spring training? But Judge I think this was more precautionary than anything else.
Yeah.
But still, like Aaron Judge, obviously, is your best offensive player. The last thing the Yankees need is to lose their best pitcher and their best offensive player. So, it wasn't bad enough that Cole was going through an injury. You need to up the ante a little bit. Let's also give you a heart attack when it comes to Aaron Judge. But Judge, a couple of games, I forget which game it was, but I think it was last week. One of the games last week, the Yankees were starting their regulars, and all their regulars were getting 3 at-bats, except Judge. And Boone lied, saying that it was always the plan to give him only 2 at-bats. But John Boy Media, I think, was the first to pick up on this, that, he didn't get his third turn at-bat, and he was skeptical that something was going on with Judge. And then Yankee fans started to pick up on that, and they started getting concerned. And then there was talk that, Judge would be back in the lineup. I believe it was Monday of this week. That obviously didn't happen. Then he needed to get an MRI. So the whole thing was just a disaster. It was so convoluting. Everybody was going, what the hell is going on here? But he went to get an MRI, like I mentioned. He got an MRI on his abs, apparently. And fortunately, the MRI looks clean. And they're saying that Judge should be back in the lineup on Saturday. At this point, I will believe it when I see it. Shut up.
Right.
Just shut up. I am tired of this nonsense. Whatever happens at this point. But yeah, at this point, I'm like, you can't make this up. You really cannot make this stuff up. The day that this team doesn't deal with any spring training injuries will be the day somebody walks on the sun. It never, ever stops. It's the same thing every year. It's definitely old. It's definitely frustrating. When it comes to baseball fans nowadays, they talk about the shape that these guys are in and, the quality of play and, that these guys are facing better pitchers and these guys are some of the best players that you'll ever see. To an extent, that's probably right. And, sometimes I hear modern baseball fans making fun of guys who played in the 70s or whatever for being out of shape and drinking beer and spending their off season by, going fishing rather than working out. Say what you want about those guys, but at least those guys could stay on the field and play 162 games a year. So, yeah. But Boone on Judge, his exact quotes were, he was mid-spring beat up. Mid-spring beat up. If it was midsummer beat up, I could understand that. Mid-spring, get out of here. Like, it's just ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, MRA looks fine, hopefully. But Judge isn't too concerned. He said he should be ready for opening day. Whoopee.
Yeah. I think specifically this one, like, obviously he's been beaten up, but I think that he'll be ready for opening day. That's obviously the biggest thing about this, right? And he's at least won the bat, at least in the spring. He's got more of the reps. You look at a guy like Gerrit Cole, he made like one start specifically, and then maybe threw off the mound after, and that was it, right? So I feel like for him, it's going to be a lot longer of a build up when he comes back. When you're looking at specifically Aaron Judge, you know, I think specifically with him, if the MRI came back clean, just rest the guy up for a bit. He is ready for opening day because you don't want this to linger, right? You don't want him to obviously come back. I know that there was a viral video going around from John Boy himself that he was wincing, I believe, after one of the swings that he had. So it might have been kind of something from that because you kind of can see it from a lot of players in terms of how they react at times in terms of when they swing the bat and something's up. So I think he's throwing right now. I know that there were some videos and pictures of him throwing with Juan Soto in terms of playing catch. He was signing autographs, I think, the other day. So I think he's in good spirits right now. I just think that he just hasn't swung the bat yet. And like you mentioned with Boone, he expected to be playing on Saturday, but don't take that for a grain of salt whatsoever until he's actually physically playing. But I do think, though, that for him specifically, it could be a lot worse. And I just think that as long as he's ready for opening day, that's pretty much all that they care about at this point in time.
Yeah, that should be really the only thing that matters at this point. The last thing, like I said, it's bad enough you're going to be losing your best pitcher for a while. Last thing you need now is to be without your best player for a while. Obviously we saw that last year when Judge had that toe injury and missed about 2 months of the season, and that just killed the Yankee season.
Pretty
So,
much, yeah.
the Yankees revolve. Honestly, the Yankees revolve around Cole and Judge. Those two guys are the
Oh,
nucleus. They're the nucleus to the team. Without those guys, the Yankees they're lost. They don't know exactly
well,
how to.
thankfully now you guys got Juan Soto because you guys would be really lost without him, right? Because the pitching last year kind of fell apart, the hitting kind of fell apart in the second half of your season. So I mean, Soto at least could give you that stability. You got a healthy Rizzo coming back. Torres looks pretty good at least so far. So I think that even though, yeah, obviously losing Gerrit Cole is a massive blow, but heck, if you lose him for 1 to 2 months, right? This is obviously coming from a Red Sox fan myself, as another perspective, and Judge is out even for a couple weeks in the month of March to April. You could still probably kill that blow specifically by out slugging teams, right? Because you guys have a pretty good lineup now. If this is obviously something where Judge is missing a couple months and Cole's missing a couple months, then maybe that's a different story, but. I think with Rizzo coming back at full on, not concussed, he looks great this spring.
Yeah,
That's a massive plus. If you can get anything from Stanton, but that's just asking for me specific, he just himself is a lot more wear and tear at this point in time with him, very up and down. And I mean, you're just asking hopefully for like a 220 average with like 35 bombs. That's even maybe asking a lot at this point in time now, but he's just pretty much a power nothing guy at this point in time in his career. So it's not like you guys like losing Cole. It's just like, oh my God, like the season's over. Um, Even though he's so important, but Cole, like you mentioned, Cole and Judge are the two most important guys to be a difference potentially from being a wild card team or potentially being from an AL East division winner. That's pretty much the biggest, you know, difference there.
yeah. One's an MVP, the other's a Cy Young winner. So they've won those awards back to back years. So yeah, it's no secret that they're the reason behind the Yankees' success over the past couple of years. But like I mentioned with Gerrit Cole, with him being gone, the Yankees are still looking for other pitching options. And one of the names that I brought up was Dylan Cease. And there was a lot of talk that the Yankees were looking to make a deal with the White Sox. But then last night, out of the blue, this came out of nowhere. Dylan Cease got traded to the San Diego Padres, of all teams. So Cease is going to the Padres, and in exchange, the White Sox are getting right-hander Drew Thorpe, who already got traded earlier this year from the Yankees in the Juan Soto deal. So the poor guy now has to pack his bags and go. So he's covering all three time zones, basically, or all three divisions: East, West, Central. Never even had the taste of the West to begin with. But he starts out on the East Coast with the Yankees. Then he gets traded out west to San Diego. Now he's got to go to Chicago. I'm sure he's going to be wishing he was in San Diego when he's playing in Chicago at the beginning of the season because the weather there sucks. But Thorpe was the number 4 ranked prospect in the Padres system, and he's ranked number 64 overall on ESPN's top 100 prospect list. I'm reading off the ESPN website, by the way. So the White Sox get him. They get a right-hander. I'm definitely not pronouncing this correctly. Yaro Iriarty. No idea how you pronounce his name. He's the number 7 prospect among San Diego's minor leaguers. The White Sox are also receiving outfielder Samuel Savala and right-hander Steven Wilson. Don't really know much about any of the other 3 other than Thorpe. And Cease is a very solid arm, although he kind of had an odd season last year. He wasn't very good last year, actually, but he is the White Sox best pitcher, or was the White Sox best pitcher, I should say. But I did not see this coming. I did not know that the Padres were still in the hunt for another pitching arm. I mean, obviously, they stacked up their rotation when they made that deal with the Yankees in exchange for Juan Soto. They had gotten guys like Michael King and Johnny Brito. I'm forgetting somebody else off the top of my head, but there was another pitcher involved in that deal as well. So they had already stacked up that rotation, but they wanted another arm, and now they're including Dylan Cease. So now they got guys like Cease, Yu Darvish, Michael King. Right now the Padres rotation is looking pretty solid. But it's also a little strange too to me because it wasn't necessarily their pitching that struggled last year. It was their offense, and they're losing one of the best offensive players in Juan Soto. But the Padre lineup, on paper, it still looks pretty good with guys like, Fernando Tatis Jr. and Xander Bogaerts. So, the Padres right now, I think, are just hoping that last year offensively was just a fluke. But they definitely it definitely looks like they wanted to strengthen that rotation. Bringing in a guy like Dylan Cease, I definitely think does that to an extent. I don't necessarily know if it's a game changer in the National League West. I mean, the pitching situation with the Dodgers, I thought, was more dire than the Padres was going into this season. The Dodgers desperately needed some arms, and they made some pretty good moves like this offseason, such as bringing in guys like Tyler Glasnow. But yeah, this just came out of nowhere. I did not see this coming. But Dylan Cease is now off to San Diego.
Yeah, this came out of the blue myself. Now, I did read a report, I think, the other day that from Ken Rosenthal, who's obviously pretty tight end from the Athletic, that the Yankees, the Texas Rangers, because I guess that the Texas Rangers are looking for more help as well too, and the Padres. And I thought to myself, this would be so AJ Preller, I don't know, guy specifically that essentially just goes balls to walls a lot of times, and he made it work. He got the White Sox obviously are getting Drew Thorpe, like you mentioned. He was from in the Juan Soto deal, and then they got a bunch of different other prospects. I'm not very, aware a lot of the Padres farm system, but the White Sox, I think at this point in time of their franchise, they're rebuilding, right? And I think with Dylan Cease can go to now potentially a contender, right? With the I know that obviously you have the Dodgers in there. The Diamondbacks obviously made the World Series last year. The Giants obviously made some moves, but the Padres specifically, you have Dylan Cease. You also have Musgrove. You have Darvish. Probably takes any type of hope of Blake Snell coming back because he would probably kind of have a similar production, kind of like a Dylan Cease type. So, I think that for this is a really good move for the Padres. Cease can obviously now pitch for a team that has more of a chance to make the playoffs, and he doesn't have to ruin his career over in Chicago with them rebuilding. So I think it's good for both parties. The White Sox obviously get younger with some pieces that they got from San Diego, and the Padres obviously get a ace caliber pitcher where they can help bolster their rotation at the top.
Yeah, well, the White Sox have been in a never-ending rebuilding mode for God knows how long. Even in 2021, when they made the playoffs, they were kind of in a rebuilding mode. But yeah, the White Sox now trade their best pitcher after losing their best offensive player, Tim Anderson, this offseason. So most likely, in all likelihood, this is going to be another long season for Chicago White Sox fans. But that was a good point that you brought up. That this definitely eliminates Blake Snell returning to San Diego. But I mean, the Yankees were, like I mentioned, in negotiations with the White Sox in acquiring Dylan Cease, and apparently they had made them an offer last night before Cease was dealt to the Padres. But apparently, the White Sox wanted the Yankees' top prospect outfielder Spencer Jones, who who's a big 6'7" left-handed outfielder, similar physique to Aaron Judge, and went on a tear this spring. Granted, it was only in about a couple of games, but there's a lot of high hopes for Jones, and the Yankees don't want to part ways with him. I personally want Spencer Jones to come up through the Yankee system, and I want to see him in the Bronx one day. I think he's perfectly built for Yankee Stadium with that physique. The fact that he's a big lefty and that short porch and right, obviously. I don't necessarily blame the Yankees for not following through with the White Sox if that was their demand. I would keep Spencer Jones. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Cease is a good pitcher, but I don't think he's worth giving up somebody with the caliber of Spencer Jones. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I definitely.
We were kind of in a similar boat with the Red Sox last year. The Red Sox needed some pitching help obviously last year, and the Padres were asking for Brian Bale. I'm just like, yeah, no, like for like 1 or 2 years of control of Cease, like you mentioned, he's a good pitcher, but Brian Bale is obviously a lot younger. He has a lot of promise, and now obviously we have the guy extended for the next 5 to 6 years. So I just think that right now for us specifically, we're not in the short-term contending type mode. We're in specifically a rebuild that is hopeful to be a contender in the next couple of years. The Padres right now are in a position where they're in a short-term type of, try to be short-term contention, the long-term help. So there's just a lot of GMs out there that just go for it, and obviously the Padres are one of them. So I mean, that's why they did it.
Yep, absolutely. So we're going to talk about a different team's rotation. We're going to talk about the New York Mets rotation. They apparently have the best spring training ERA, and that's pretty interesting to say. I'm actually just quickly looking it up on online. I just want to see what their ERA is, but yeah, I mean the Mets obviously had a lot of work to do in that rotation. Obviously, they lost two future Hall of Famers midway last season in Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer, but both of those guys are up there in age. But yeah, the Mets, bring in guys like Luis Severino, who, like I mentioned earlier, has just dealt with injury after injury over the past couple of seasons. I mean, Kodai Senga is going to be missing a good chunk of time, and the fact that the Mets haven't really missed a step, after losing him, that's pretty impressive. Obviously, they have Jose Quintana, another solid arm. I'm probably forgetting like one or two more guys off the
Yeah,
top of my head.
so they have right now they have Sean Manaea, Adrian Hauser, Luis Severino. Those are pretty much the three guys that they had, and then they also are kind of on Tyler McGill too. He was there last year, kind of early on the season before he kind of got bounced around, whether it was bullpen or the minors. So yeah, I mean, this Mets team has to get on a good note, specifically before Kodai Senga gets back. So I know, yes, spring obviously doesn't mean a lot for a lot of teams, but for the Mets, it might mean something, right? And now I will obviously kind of say that, you're not facing, starting lineups, consistently with different teams. It's more of like a lot of the backups, but take into account, obviously, the starting lineups for a lot of the teams lately are playing a lot more. They're obviously trying to ramp up until the start of the season. So yeah, I mean, guys like Manaea, guys like Hauser, those guys have to step up this year, especially now with Kodai Senga going down. And who would have thought, Ryan, that the Red Sox supposed ace is going to be out for the year. Gerrit Cole is going to be out for the start of spring training. And the Mets right now are going to be down with their ace. So essentially, we're essentially all right now going through it. So if you're thinking about it from your perspective, from my perspective, from a Mets perspective, we just can't catch a break. So that's the kind of way I see it.
No, not at all. But yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, spring training, take it with a grain of salt because that doesn't necessarily translate to how the regular season is going to go. But regardless, that definitely seems promising for Met fans, and I definitely think that there are some things to look forward to this year in Flushing. So we'll see how it goes, but we can't say for certain that this is going to be the way it will be once the games start counting. So we'll see. This is just a quick other topic that I just want to quickly discuss. The Milwaukee Brewers closer, Devin Williams. He's out with 2 stress fractures in his back. He's going to be out for about 3 months. And this is another massive blow to another team that is reliant on somebody of his caliber. Now, the Brewers, obviously, their contending window is almost shut, I would say. I mean, last year they were upset in the wild card series by the eventual National League champion Diamondbacks, and that was their last year with Craig Counsell at the helm. So, there's a lot of question marks surrounding that Brewers team. So, this only makes the question marks even larger, and I think this is a detrimental loss to them. The Brewers bullpen has not necessarily been that reliable, to be honest. I mean, I don't really know too much because I don't really watch the Brewers. I don't really know what goes on with that team. But obviously they lost Corbin Burns in that rotation. So, I just think that this is just the last thing the Brewers needed as well. So, and the Brewers obviously are, I mean, the National League Central is not the strongest division, obviously. So I'm not saying that the Brewers are completely out of it in spring training, but the road doesn't get any easier with this for them. It's going to be a tough road for them, I think, and it's going to be a challenge to be without somebody of Devin Williams' caliber, like I mentioned.
Definitely. He might be like up there in terms of for sure like top 5 closer in the game. His stuff is just absolutely disgusting. And not just the injury himself, but there was a lot of talk that he was going to be in trade rumors kind of earlier on. I was going to be looking at like a team like the Dodgers, who of course were going crazy at it, for a lot of these guys. So now this obviously hurts his trade value, I think, where guy goes down and who knows how long he's going to miss in terms of time. So like you said, I don't really follow the Brewers myself because I don't really care. Nothing against their fan base and their team, but I just can like they're going to be a fun team. I just don't watch them on a consistent basis where I can be like, all right, this really good. This guy's really good. This other guy's really good. I mean, from like an outside perspective, I know like Christian Yelich, obviously Corbin Burns before he got moved on. I mean, those are good pieces. But yeah, I mean, this is obviously a tough blow. Like you mentioned, the NL Central isn't like great, but I think just his overall caliber. I mean, they had Josh Hader and Devin Williams their back end for the last couple of years before Hader moved on, and they were one of the best bullpens in the league. Now you obviously lose Williams, and it's just like there's just a lot of questions in that back end now. So, outside of potentially missing on now, you lose Burns and now you lose Williams, at least for a decent amount of time. It's going to be a lot of change to start the year over in Milwaukee.
Yeah, definitely. So tough break for the Brewers. Join the club, or we got a spot on the sofa for you guys to join us in pitching injuries. So, yep, the pitching injury bug just continues. I mean, last week we were discussing about guys like Justin Verlander going down and Sonny Gray going down. So, yeah, I mean, this trend just continues right before spring training even begins. It's tough. It's not fun. No, you never want to see anybody get injured. But, man, I mean, some of these guys, I think, really need to just rest their bodies sometimes. I don't know. I'm not a pitcher, so maybe I shouldn't say anything anymore about this. But yeah, that's that story. Now we're going to get into one story that I think both of us will be not necessarily thrilled to talk about. It's very bizarre. And yeah, Aroldis Chapman posted quite a disturbing video on his Instagram page. Basically, I'm just going to come out and say it. He was lying on a couch with an older woman and proceeded to grab her chest. I'm not kidding when I say that. He grabbed her chest. And when I saw this video, I just went, why? Just why? Now, I'm not going to get too much into detail about this because this story is so stupid, if you ask me. And Chapman, I don't know why he did that. Maybe he was drunk. I don't know. that's really the only thing that I could think of as to why he would do this and post something like this online. But the Pittsburgh Pirates right now, I'm sure, are rolling their eyes and shaking their heads like, "Oh God, what have we gotten ourselves into?"
Yeah. I'm obviously not laughing specifically at you per se, but just this overall situation is just like, what in the world is this, right? And Chapman used to be one of the best pitchers, like best closers in the game. Like his stuff was just absolutely electric and stuff like that. Then he went over to the Yankees and he had his hiccups here and there, but then he went over to Texas last year and I thought that he kind of got his stuff a little bit back, for the most part. But yeah, this was just something that we could be like, all right, we didn't have to know about that whatsoever. And it's like, all right, it's an older woman, like you said, maybe he was drunk. That's probably the first case of, kind of what it could have been. But yeah, I won't get into much like you mentioned as well. It's not worth it, it's his overall life, but man, it's very, very odd.
Yeah, and I don't know even. There's been speculation that this woman was his mother. I don't know that. I don't really want to know that. So I don't want to know any more about this. I don't really want to talk about this anymore. So let's just move on. So
There's a lot more to worry about,
Yeah.
for pitching injuries and opening day, and then you see something like this out of the blue. It's like, yeah, it's all right. We'll pass.
But now I mentioned this to you before the start of the show that look for fans in the stands to be moving their hands in a peculiar direction to get on his case. So
Yeah, I guess so. I'll probably know like a meme everywhere. In terms of when he's coming out of the mound over in Pittsburgh.
You're probably going to get fans in the stands when he's in an opposing ballpark. You're probably going to get fans in the stands doing this.
Or there'll be probably shirts out there. Who knows? For all these type of things, they might make a shirt out of this. If anything that goes viral specifically, they could make a shirt out of. You never know. And
yep. All right, that's it. I'm done talking about this. All right. So we're going to be going to our next topic, which is the National League predictions. So we over the past couple of weeks we were talking about the American League. Now we're going to move on to the NL. And obviously, this is the last week of games not counting because next week is this South Korea series between the Padres and the Dodgers. So we're going to start with let's start with the National League East. So the NL East is a dogfight basically, and it seems it's been that way for the past couple of seasons now. The top two teams in that division are the Atlanta Braves and the Philadelphia Phillies. Obviously, the Braves are a juggernaut with the talents of Matt Olson, reigning National League Most Valuable Player, Ronald Acuna Jr. That rotation is anchored by Spencer Strider. Obviously, guys like Austin Riley. That is a very tough lineup. They led the majors in wins last year with 104. Yet, for the second year in a row, they were upset in the National League Division Series by their division rival Philadelphia Phillies. The Phillies obviously are a very solid team led by Bryce Harper on the offense. Kyle Schwarber, the strikeout or home run machine. Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola anchor that rotation as well. So those two teams are most likely, in my opinion, going to be fighting for the 1 and 2 spots in the National League East. Obviously, we talked a little bit about the Mets. The Mets are kind of in a weird situation. There's not many expectations for them this season, but that's not to count them out entirely necessarily. They could make some noise this year. They didn't really make any amazing offseason acquisitions. Like I mentioned, they did bring in guys like Luis Severino for that rotation. They brought in guys like Harrison Bader, both who have long injury histories. The Mets also brought in somebody else. I forget exactly who it was on the offensive end. But there's not really too many expectations for them. A lot of people have them at being a 500 team at best this year. Then there are the Miami Marlins. The Marlins, coming off a playoff season last year, they brought in Tim Anderson, like I mentioned. I'm very surprised that they have not offered anything to JD Martinez. That's kind of inexcusable if you ask me. Like, just give him a 1 year give him a 1 year contract.
And is he from like that area too?
Yeah. They could use another power. They could use another power bat in that lineup.
Yeah.
It's absurd.
Like Jordan Montgomery with the Red Sox. Like you'd think like it's like right there, and it's just like they're not pulling the trigger. for some
Like,
odd reason.
I do not understand why Martinez has not been signed by anybody yet, to be honest with you. He's very
I think the Mets were the latest to be rumored, so that'll be a good bat for them specifically because they would need it.
In my opinion, JD Martinez is one of the most underappreciated baseball players, if you ask me.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, he was great. Like in terms
You
of the Red Sox, 2018, like it's for sure. Like he was, I think for 2018, like he was one of our most consistent bats. Like
nearly won the
entire
Triple
year.
Crown. Nearly won the Triple Crown if it wasn't for Mookie.
Yeah, no, our lineup in 2018 was absolutely loaded. Like I know people were thinking that we're cheating left and right with the core stuff here and there. Like essentially, no matter what was going to happen, that team specifically from the start to the end, nobody was stopping us.
No, not at all. I mean, there was a reason you guys started out 16-2. So yeah, I mean, the Marlins. You know, they have Luis Ariz, obviously one of the best the best contact hitter in baseball, if you ask me. Nobody's better at putting the bat on the ball than him. And then there are the lowly Nationals with no expectations whatsoever. They did sign Joey Gallo, though, so look out for occasional 400-foot bombs and thousands of strikeouts. For me personally, all I can say is enjoy him because I did.
They got a nice park too. I've never been, but I've heard good things, so that's another thing.
It is. Personally, for me, if I had to give my predictions on this division, it's probably not too surprising. I do have the Braves winning this division again for this would be year 7, the 7th year in a row they would win the National League East, dating back to 2018. So I think it would be their 7th straight division.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I do have the Braves winning this division. I think their offense is too much for a lot of teams to handle. I had the Phillies runner-up. I think the Phillies could probably win around 90 to 95 games, to be honest with you. I think they could do a little better this year. I think there's more potential than they've realized. I mean, they've won around 85 to 89 games the past 2 years, including their World Series appearance in 2022. But I think there's more potential that the Phillies have yet to realize with themselves. So I'll give the Phillies around 90 to 95 wins for second in that division. Third place, I'll give the Mets. I think the Mets could be I think they could be a sleeper team, to be honest, if you're not careful with them. I mean, I don't really have too many expectations for them, but I think they can win around 80 to 85 games. I think they got some solid players. It just depends on if they mesh well together and if guys can stay healthy. So I have them in third. Fourth place, I'll go with the Marlins. Like we mentioned, the Marlins, they're coming off a playoff season, but you don't necessarily know what you're going to get with them. They're either hit or miss. And finally, like I mentioned, the Nationals in fifth place. There's just really not much to look forward to in DC, as there hasn't really been since 2019. So that's my prediction for the National League East.
Yeah, obviously I don't have to go team by team in terms of everything about it, but kind of just the overall summarization. The Braves obviously are loaded like usual. Really good lineup, really good rotation. They have them for the last couple of years. The Phillies obviously just won the World Series last year. They of course are trying to get back and trying to get that World Series reign. The Mets obviously. Ton of questions. It's Pete Alonso's walk year, so I think that he's going to obviously himself have a monster year. But pretty much everything else comes down to the pitching. Depending on in terms of when Kodai Senga comes back, how they essentially can. They of course a really good start to the year. Because if they don't, they could be probably sellers by the deadline.
Yeah.
The Marlins obviously they're a really young team. Like you mentioned, a guy like JD Martinez would be perfect for that lineup because I think that they have pieces there. They're not essentially. I don't think they're just. Yeah, I think it's going to take a couple of years for them to kind of be really, really solid. And then obviously the Nationals, there's just no expectation at all. So for me, I'm going to go a little different than yours. I'm going to go with the Phillies number 1. I really liked in terms of what the Phillies have been this year. And this is also too for myself. I think that they find a way to pull Jordan Montgomery. And they try to get him, and they essentially have him to be their number 3 pitcher. So. I think they can make an argument then if they get Jordan Montgomery that they can go toe-to-toe with the Braves. I mean, heck, they beat the Braves last year. They've kind of had the Braves number in the playoffs. So I'm going to go with the Phillies to be number 1, and the Braves are going to be number 2. I think that their win totals are going to be neck and neck. So that's essentially kind of how I look at it. Number 3, I'm gonna go with the Marlins. I think that the Marlins are kind of a sneaky team. I really like their pitching, um, and I just think that they find a way to maybe get a piece or two before the season. Then I have the Mets. I think the Mets are gonna be like the high 70s, low 80s. I just don't trust consistently in their rotation. They have a lot of guys that they brought in, kind of like the Cardinals. They just kind of bring like a lot of guys that are just like, all right, it's just like there's not like any guy specific in that rotation that you're like, yeah, like obviously last year they had Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer. It's like, okay, like there's a lot of expectations. Like you just don't know, like, okay, maybe Minaj is okay. Severino obviously has had a lot of injuries. Hauser. It's like there's just no, I mean, I just can't really like put them specifically like in that, high 80 type range in terms of the win totals. But heck, they obviously could shock me for sure. And then the Nationals, obviously, they're going to be in last place. They're probably going to have like mid to high 60s in terms of wins, and they're probably going to be for sure one of the top selling teams out there for the deadline.
Yeah, so that's our National League East predictions. Now we'll move over to the National League Central divisions, which might be one of the more trickier divisions to predict in baseball. There's no clear-cut winner, in my opinion, in the National League Central division. But if I had to make my prediction, I'm going to say the Cubs will win the division. I don't think we mentioned this last week when it came to the American League Central. I don't think it'll take too many wins in order to win this division. I predict anywhere from 85 to 90 wins should be enough to win this division. And the Cubs have high expectations this year. They exceeded expectations last year by going 83 and 79. And then that led to them letting go of David Ross to bring in veteran manager and in-division rival manager Craig Counsell. And a lot of people wanted Counsell to be their manager for the 2024 season. So he's now leading the Cubs into this season. And the Cubs, they got a lot of studs on that team. Obviously, they brought back Cody Bellinger, like we touched upon last week. He's a big part of that lineup. Seiya Suzuki's a pretty solid bat as well. You got pretty good rotation. Well, maybe I don't know if "good's" the right word. The rotation might be a little bit of a question mark. I mean, they have Justin Steele. They still have Kyle Hendricks. So the rotation is. We'll see how it plays out. But I do think the Cubs, could make some noise this year. And I do think that Counsell obviously is a good manager, even though he hasn't managed a team to a championship yet. I still think he's a good manager. So I'm going to give the Cubs the National League Central division. I think they'll win with 88 wins. I think they'll win with go 88 and 74.
Okay.
I just don't really think the National League Central as a whole is necessarily strong. This is for the runner-ups in the National League Central. I'm taking a gamble here. I'm going to say the Reds. I will say the Reds. I think they've improved a little bit this year. I think there are a lot of question marks surrounding the Reds. I actually don't know too much about them. But like I said with the Brewers, I just don't necessarily follow the Reds. So it's hard for me to give my complete predictions on them. But based on how they performed last year, there were some times where they looked pretty solid last year. Obviously, you got guys like Spencer Steer there.
De La Cruz.
Although De La Cruz, that was his rookie year, and he kind of struggled to find some consistency.
Right.
He got off to a fast start, but then he really struggled.
I think that he'll because he kind of came in like mid part of the season. I think with the full on season, I think that he kind of like found the ropes a little bit to kind of start. There's a lot of he found like different types of pitches. So I think that with the full on season, I think that he could have a really good year this year.
Probably, yeah. I'll say the Reds come in second, and I will give them 82 wins, 82 and 80. Second place in the National League Central. Third place, I'll go with Milwaukee. I just think that the losses of Corbin Burns and Devin Williams are just too much to handle. I'm not in love with their lineup. Christian Yelich is not the same player that he was in 2018. He's definitely showing his age, although he'll still show signs of his old self occasionally here and there. But I'm just not really high on the Brewers, to be honest with you. I mean, their biggest offensive move this season was bringing in Gary Sanchez, who's way too inconsistent and has no plate discipline at all. So I think the Brewers will get third place. I'll give them 79 wins. I'll say they go 79 and 83. Fourth place, I'll go with the Cardinals. The Cardinals obviously made some moves this offseason. You know, they brought in guys like Sonny Gray. I think they remind me. I think they brought back Lance Lynn, if I'm not mistaken. Was it Lynn?
Yep.
Yeah, they brought back Lance Lynn and Sonny Gray. There's another arm that they brought in, but you know, these guys are kind of past their prime. Besides Gray, I guess. But you know, I think that the Cardinals still have some work to do. I don't think they'll be any worse than they were last year. I think last year was their lowest point that they could hit. I mean, for an organization that's just too proud, I think there's more to give. Obviously, you still have Arenado and Goldschmidt, but they're getting up there in age as well, especially Goldschmidt, who I think is going to be 37 this upcoming season. So I don't know if
he's a free agent too.
So yeah, although he could still smash, he could still mash.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly. I think I'm just so skeptical about that pitching. I really don't know if that pitching is going to hold up. But I'll say the Cardinals come in fourth at 78 and 84 behind Milwaukee. And lastly, I got the Pirates coming in fifth place in that division. All I can say about the Pirates is that you've got Brian Reynolds and a creepy Aroldis Chapman. So that's really all I got to say about the Pirates. Although they do have O'Neal Cruz, who's coming back from a pretty serious injury, though, last year.
Yeah, he's been mashing.
Yeah, but Cruz needs to get better at shortstop. His accuracy, his arm accuracy is just way too wild. He's like a baseball throwing windmill. So he needs to hit first baseman much more consistently. So, and I also like a Brian Hayes too. Yep. I'll give the Pirates 77 wins. So we go from 79, 78, 77, back, in spots 3 through 5 in the National League Central.
Yeah, I mean, like the AL Central, like I think we predicted a couple weeks ago, the NL Central is kind of the same way. You just kind of really just don't know specifically in terms of who like the clear-cut favorite is. I mean, for myself personally, I think that I'll go with the Cubs number one because I mean, if there's any type of team that you like, they have probably they've made some moves this offseason. Of course, they got Imanaga, who I think is gonna have a really good year. The Japanese lefty.
That's what
they got Justin Steele, Kyle Hendricks. You know, their bullpen I think is okay. And then obviously they got obviously Cody Bellinger. They got Dansby Swanson. You know, Christopher Morel. They got pieces there. Ian Happ. I mean, their lineup's gonna be pretty good. So I think the Cubs can do what they can to win that division. I'm going to go a little different like you as well, too. Number 2, I'm going to go with the Cardinals. I think that the Cardinals, have a really big-time leap this year. Last year, obviously, I think that they battled injuries, and they just feel like a team that's going to have a major bounce back. So I'm banking on them, and I think that when there's any team that will have a bounce back, I think it's going to be them. So I have them at number 2. And obviously, that feels like a little steep, but I'm going with a bold one here. Number 3, I'm going to go with the Reds. I think that the Reds obviously are just kind of like in that middle team. I think their pitching has some promise. They've Hunter Green, but kind of really outside of that, it's just kind of maybe they have Mike Clevenger out there. I think they could be a perfect guy for the Reds for some odd reason. I don't know why, but you know, if they have like a couple more arms, they could probably be up there in like the 1 or 2 spot. But until then, I'm going to have them at 3. I think that their lineup is still okay. The Brewers, I have them dropping down to 4. I had the Brewers kind of earlier on before Williams was injured. I had them at like 2, but now I think this is really a massive blow for them. And I just don't know specifically if their lineup can kind of spoil that blow. Because 2 of their guys, well, of course, one that they moved on from, and then 2, essentially their closer. So I have them in then 4th. And then the last, I have the Pirates. I don't even think that the Pirates are a bad team, but I think specifically that there's the teams in front of them are just a lot better. They're just a young team, and I just think that it's going to take a couple more years before they come into contention. Of course, they drafted Paul Skeens in the draft last year. I think that he's obviously going to be kind of their workhorse and kind of the new star that they have outside of Brian Reynolds. So, yeah, I have Cubs number 1, Cardinals number 2, Reds number 3, Number 4, the Brewers, and then number 5, I have the Pirates.
Yeah, I could see that too. I was after I gave you my predictions, I'm thinking to myself, maybe I rated the Cardinals kind of low, especially because the Cardinals can't. I mean, I think the Cardinals are capable of flipping a switch within the course of 1 year, but we'll see how it goes. And finally, we'll move on to the National League West, and this could be a little bit challenging because there's a lot of competition in that division. But I think I'll start out with the obvious of who I think is going to win the division. I don't think it's any question. I think the majority of people have the Dodgers winning the National League West division. Obviously, you add guys like Shohei Ohtani. He's going to be teaming up with Freddie Freeman. He's going to be teaming up with Mookie Betts. That 1 through 3 is absolutely sick. You got guys like Max Muncy still in there who can mash. Will Smith's a pretty solid hitter as well. That rotation is a lot better, obviously. Tyler Glasnow is now their number 1 ace. Obviously, bringing in Yoshinobu Yamamoto, the biggest pitching free agent on the market this offseason, can only help them. I think Yamamoto is going to have a solid first season in Major League Baseball. Walker Buehler is still there as well. He's pretty solid as well. The only question mark that I have for the Dodgers is that is their pitching. I don't know exactly how nobody really knows right now exactly how their starting rotation is going to fare out. Obviously, there's some concerns with Glasnow's health history. He's had health issues in the past. I think Yamamoto, like I mentioned, is going to have a good year, but you never know. That bullpen is also a little bit suspect as well. But regardless, I don't think there's any question that the Dodgers have arguably the best lineup in all of Major League Baseball. So I have them winning the division. Second place, I'm going to take a little bit of a gamble here. I'm going to give second place to the Padres. Yeah, I know. I'm kind of saying, am I really doing this? I will give second place to the Padres. I think the Padres can win about 86 to 87 games. I do like what they did to that rotation. I definitely think that can help them. And honestly, even though losing Juan Soto is never ideal, I definitely think that's going to help them financially a little bit and maybe allow them to maybe make a move at the deadline or whatnot if they need some help with that offense. I don't think, and right behind them, I have the defending National League champion Diamondbacks in third. I think it's going to be a dogfight for second, third place in the division between Arizona and San Diego. The Diamondbacks obviously have a lot of talent. They brought in Eduardo Rodriguez to help solidify that rotation. In fourth place, I have the Giants. Giants made some nice moves this offseason, but I still think they're about a year or two away from contending. And then last place is the Rockies, and there's no point in talking about them.
All right, for me, I'm going to go a little different. We've been kind of a little different today, Ron, a lot of our predictions, which is kind of fun in a way. But I think number 1, we could pretty much be all on board. It's the Dodgers. I mean, they probably, if not the Yankees, they, of course, were the most busiest team in the offseason. You have bring a guy in Shohei Ohtani. I think that everybody knows at this point in time. I don't know if you know him, Ryan, but he's just kind of the best player in baseball. But outside of him, you have Yoshinobu Yamamoto, of course, the most coveted pitcher out there. You have Tyler Glasnow. They essentially have the number 3 as the number 1. So you don't have a lot of that. They essentially lost to the Diamondbacks last in the playoffs, and they obviously had that meme of I'm going to take this personally because Andrew Freeman went out and just got all these guys, and now everybody is essentially just looking at it like, man, you damn Diamondbacks, like why did you guys do this to us? Mm-hmm. So I have the Dodgers number 1. And then number 2, I have the Giants. I think that the Giants lineup is kind of sneaky good. They brought in Jun-Hoo Lee. They have now they have Matt Chapman. They have a couple guys there that I really have a lot of promise with. I'm trying to remember some others on the top of my head right now. Yeah, Soler. Yeah. So I mean, I think that Giants team is going to be sneaky good and give a lot of teams some problems. If it wasn't the Dodgers, I would consider potentially the Giants to be potentially leading that division. Possibly. They obviously have Logan Webb. kind of anchor in that rotation. I have a lot of high hopes for him. So I have the Giants number 2. And obviously Bob Melvin's a very, very good manager. Number 3, I have the Diamondbacks. I think the Diamondbacks took a little step back this year after how they played in last year. I think they're still really solid. Of course, they have Corbin Carroll, Keltel Marte. They just have like a lot of pieces going for them, and their pitching's really good, really sneaky good. They got Merrill Kelly, Brendan Pfaadt, who I think was pretty good in that playoff run last year. So they have some pieces there. I just think that they take a little step back this year because it's kind of hard to duplicate what you just did last year. Of course, being in that wild card and going all the way to the World Series, I just think that they take a little step back. And then I have the Padres number 4. I think with the Padres, they're kind of like last year where they have a lot of pieces, but it's just like putting that whole puzzle together. And I just think that they're kind of stuck with some contracts. I wouldn't be shocked if they, kind of had some guys at the trade deadline they maybe talk about, because Preller is obviously just a madman. So yeah, I mean, I just think after moving on from Juan Soto, that's just a big blow to them. So I have the Padres at 4th, and then I have the Rockies at 5th. I mean, the Rockies, if it's not the Oakland Athletics, they could be probably the worst team in baseball. So I'll pretty much just say that.
Yeah, so those are our National League predictions, and we'll see how the season plays out. But we're out of time here, and baseball season officially begins next week, March 20th in South Korea. The Padres and the Dodgers will play each other for opening day. Meanwhile, everybody else still has a few more spring training games to go. But yeah, the season is getting closer and closer. I can already smell it, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so very much for watching. This episode obviously is on our YouTube channel, and obviously you can follow us on all of our other social media pages, which are down below in the description bar. But on behalf of Ben Kruse, I'm Ryan Touhey, and we'll see you next week.